Hey everyone, welcome to Supercharged Fridays. My name is Sonal, I'm a career coach, and this is the best part of the week where we get together every single Friday and share competitive tips and strategies how you can get that dream job, get promoted, and lead a happier, richer, and more purposeful life. Why not, right? Who doesn't want that? So, as you can see, I have a special guest with me today, the one and only Meredith Watkins. Meredith, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and I'm going to give the people a few seconds to come in, because I know sometimes there's a delay between us going live and people actually knowing that we're live. And if you're watching us, come in and say hi in the comments. Tell us where you are, what time is it. We have a absolutely fab session planned for you today, with lots of nuggets that Meredith is going to share. I just know it. So feel free to, bring your pen, bring your paper. It's one of those live streams where we want to put you to a little bit of work as well. But it's not all work. We're going to have fun. So Meredith, very warm welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm so excited. I've hardly been able to sleep. So Meredith, so a lot of people on LinkedIn, may not necessarily know who you are, because I feel like you're quite active on Instagram and other medium, but you also are. I love your posts on LinkedIn. So knowing that this is a storytelling session, why don't you walk us through your backstory, your career backstory?
Okay. So it's kind of windy, which I think probably there's more of us than we realize who kind of have similar stories. So I actually started my undergrad as a journalism major, and then was like, oh no, I don't want to be living by the deadline all the time, which you 100% are as a journalist. And so I started exploring what I was interested in, ended up with a psychology degree, which I found very interesting, just people and...
Yeah, that's great. But tell me, when you say journalism, was that print during those days, or TV, or what kind of journalism?
Well, that's a good question, because that was a while ago. These days, it was definitely not online. It was more newspaper, to be honest with you. And I think it's that, because I was like, as a 17, 18-year-old, thinking very limited, like it's just newspaper and that's very fast paced. And I was like, oh, that feels exhausting to me.
Yeah. No, I love that. So I can see a few names here of people who've come in, and I'm just going to say hi to you guys. This is very relatable, Meredith, and thank you for sharing, because a lot of us have had those winding journeys. I'm sorry I interrupted you, because I know you have a lot more to say. But people who are listening, don't feel shy to embrace the windiness of your career, because it's unique and nobody has done it the way you've done it. So I love that. I'm going to let you continue, Meredith, but a quick hello to Hemant, Balram, Risto, Sudeep, Abdullah, Arshdeep. It says LinkedIn user, I don't know, Deepsa. Lovely having you guys here. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're all in completely different parts of the world, so morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. So Meredith, journalism, and then how did journalism become psychology?
Well, here's the thing. This is what I think now. I think what attracted me about journalism, well, first of all, writing and editing just comes naturally to me. It's just one of those things that I can do very easily. I didn't know I was naturally good at it until like teachers would give me feedback like, oh, this is really great. And I was like, okay, great. I didn't realize, And, but I think what it is that I liked about writing, and I still like about writing, and what I do now, is getting to know people and their stories, because I find them interesting. So psychology obviously is very much about that. It's all about people's stories and where they're coming from and their experiences and how it made them who they are, etc. So I got my bachelor's in psychology, and then I was in psychology. You cannot do a whole lot professionally without an advanced degree. And I was tired of school. And so I was like, I'm not going straight into my master's program. That's too much.
And also, it's nice to start earning money in the real world again.
And so I said to myself, well, if I'm not going to go straight to grad school, I do need to earn money. And so I should probably get a job. And I had a connection who got me in an interview at a magazine company. And I worked as an editor at various editorial positions for a group of magazines for a few years. Actually, they were truck and car enthusiast magazines, which is not me. It's kind of funny when people, they meet me, they're like, is that a thing of yours? Like no.
I don't want to sound like I'm stereotyping here, but it's not considered very feminine. There are women, of course, who do this and enjoy it, but not the majority, right?
Oh, no. There were like a handful of women in my building. You know? Yeah. So that is fair. Fair to say, in terms of my actual experience. But it was great because I learned all about magazine publishing. My friends were in the art department, so I learned all about design, and I was interested, right? I've learned I am just interested in learning about everything.
Curious is and absorbing like a sponge.
Yeah, exactly. So then I moved on to some other different publications, but I worked in publishing full time for about 8 years. In the middle of that, did go back get my master's in psychology. It's a lengthy process to get all of your hours. To get licensed, it's 3,000 hours. So I was working still in publishing as I was doing that. Got licensed as a marriage and family therapist. Worked in different settings, private practice, residential treatment centers, just kind of across the board doing that kind of thing.
Okay, so marriage and family practice, journalism, print, newspapers, journalism, truck and magazines. So far, we've already like discovered 3 career changes, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Loving the windiness of your trucking career.
Exactly. And then right around 2008, 2009, when the economy here in the US just crashed, I was doing private practice, and a lot of people just were not coming. They weren't paying for therapy. They weren't coming. And my daughter was born in 2009, and I was like, okay, well, I need something I can do to make money, and ideally from home. It was becoming more online at the time, still early stages, but I was like, well, I can always do writing and editing. I can do that from home anywhere I have an internet connection. And so I kind of just slid back into that. And, but what was interesting is as I moved forward, and I have been doing that for the last 10 plus years now, more exclusively, but having that psychology background, I could work with people, either medical doctors or behavioral therapists, interventionists, and it's a very specific language that they speak, and I understood it because of my psychology background. And so I could then take their language and communicate that to the average person in a way that they could understand it. So I help them with their website copy and their blog posting and like a lot of their marketing material, basically, as well as other clients. But so that started to intersect a little bit at that point.
And any regrets?
No. Now, if you'd asked me a few years ago, before I kind of recognized exactly how everything is working together, I would have said, gosh, I feel like, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm all over the place. Why can't I just decide what, why can't I just focus on one thing and just do it? Like, I would have advanced so much farther in my career if I just stuck with one thing from the get-go, right? From out of college. Yeah. And now I'm seeing, it was all necessary and they're all coming together. And having that psychology background, especially now that I also started working as a freelance book editor for one of the big publishing houses here in the US. And So I really love that storytelling through books, even for businesses, because I think it's more engaging, and I know we'll get into this more, but to bring that like humanity and story into into a business, into your business story.
Right.
And so I see how it's all working together to do, help people write their books, help them get published, show them how to do it well in a way that really engages people and is interesting to people. So now I, excuse me, I do not have regrets, but it took me a little while to get there.
Yeah, the magical thing about what you said, Meredith, when people say, do you have any regrets? Right now, you say no.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day when we're in that moment, we have that comparison virus. I shouldn't say virus in today's environment, but people who look like they have their act together, we're comparing ourselves to them so many times. And the key word here is they look like they have their act, like same town, same company for a long time. I'm not going to say same family. Yes, of course. But it doesn't mean they don't have regrets. It doesn't mean that they're happy. Right? So big assumptions. We make huge assumptions when we compare. So I love that you shared that. And I'm going to just pop in and say hi. We've got lovely people joining us yet again. So I think I stopped. I don't remember. Risto, Sudeep, Arshdeep. I think it's Maninder. Your name is coming across as LinkedIn user. I don't know why. Deepsa Bertwin. How you doing? Vani, Rashmi, Brett, and Akshay, Ravi. We're getting questions already, so we're going to get started. Without further ado, because I know people are probably like, yeah, let's go. And Rashmi, I love your question. And in fact, great minds think alike, because this is exactly the question I had in mind. Mm-hmm. Meredith, when we introduce ourselves, whether it's in a job interview, a lot of people here who hang out are people who are ambitious career professionals. They want to do well in their career. So there could be job seekers, or they already have a job. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean you don't need good interviewing skills, how to introduce yourself. Absolutely. What if someone invites you to a podcast? What if someone invites you to a panel discussion? And, they'll tell you have 60 seconds or 90 seconds to introduce yourselves. A lot of us firstly struggle with the attention, that spotlight that is on us. And then we're like, how on earth am I supposed to succinctly abridge that down into a digestible form? So help us, Dr. Watkins.
So I think our instinct, especially around work and business, is we want to present ourselves as competent, as experienced, as somebody who, this person can trust to, either listen to if it's a podcast, or hire if it's a job interview. And so what we think we need to do is just like catalog all of our skills, our experience, but that is boring. And these people have heard it all before. It's like, yeah. Okay. If you're interviewing for a specific job, most people are going to have those same skills or experience, or they wouldn't be at the interview. Right?
Yes. And we want to stand out. Everybody watching here, we want to stand out, because we're in an ocean right now.
Right. And so what's more engaging is to talk about the people who you helped and how you helped them, and give pick out a story that from your experience in work, or, whatever it is that you're doing, that really exemplifies all of those like checklist items, but tells it in a story. And, so I worked with this client, and I, did X, Y, Z or whatever, and this is the results I got for them, and this is how they, responded, or, fill in the blanks. But you can present the same exact information, but in a more engaging way by picking a story that exemplifies it. So in writing, there is a saying that says, show, don't tell.
Yeah.
So it's the example that, we get in writing class is, instead of saying the moon was shining brightly, we say moonbeams bounced off the table through the window, right? So we show it instead of telling it. Bring that to your interview. Show them through an example, through a story, a simple story, and it doesn't need to, probably shouldn't go on for a long time, especially in an interview. But think along those lines. Stories stick with people. We are drawn to stories as humans. And so we remember a story. This is why in school, a lot of times, just when our teachers are just throwing facts at us, on this date, this happened, on this date, this happened, we're just like, bleh. We don't even listen. We glaze over. We don't remember. But if they show us a movie or they tell us a story, we perk up and we remember. So the same is true, obviously, in any setting where you're introducing yourself or presenting yourself.
Okay, I love that. So everyone who's listening is going to be like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Tell a story. Don't describe. It's a yawn fest. Nobody wants to listen because on paper, we're not that different. Yeah, right. We all went to college. We all got these fancy degrees. Maybe some are more fancy than the others. Big deal, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Meredith, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell us about a time when you were interviewing and you had to do this. If you could demonstrate it for us, because it's going to bring it to life.
Yeah.
Everything that you shared, and I think it would be really, really helpful for people who sometimes struggle with this type of question.
Right. Okay, so I have a really good example that I have shared multiple times. So it's, I guess, mostly in my work as doing more coaching and ghostwriting for clients. But it exemplifies my ability to take a crazy, out there subject and do a good job with it. So I had a client who wanted a book written, a full book written about the human body, every system of the human body. So the neurological system, the circulatory system, the lymphatic system, and from each system was represented by an animal or an insect and had to be told from their perspective. So from first person. So the ants were the circulatory system. And so I had to weave together in exacting detail a medically accurate story or, telling description of each system, but it had to be this fantastical approach from these ants who are your circulatory system. And it was a challenge. And I did it, and it's published and people love it. But I mean, so that is if I can do that, then you can trust that I can do
anything. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're talking something, I don't want to say I take it for granted, but something that we all have, the human body. We all have lymphatic nodes and circular system, everything that you said, and how to make it interesting and engaging. So yeah, we all have challenging, those of us who are self-employed, we all have our challenging clients, but this takes it to a whole new level. I love that, Meredith. Thank you for sharing. Goodness.
That's one of the stories I share frequently.
Yeah, I love that. So, so Ravi says, so is there some sort of a framework? And that's a great question, Ravi, that we could follow when it comes to storytelling and making those examples, those stories, if we can make them stick?
To some degree, it depends on the setting that we're talking about. If it's an interview, it obviously has to be succinct. It has to be very concise and brief. And then if it is some other setting where you have a little bit more time, or if it's more written, obviously, there are some variations. But the key components that you need to keep in mind are, you need to have the theme or the goal in mind first. That's something that I always talk to. I'm trying to get the light a little bit better.
You're fine. We can all see, if everyone can see Meredith, give us a few thumbs ups and heart emojis and, help the algorithm as well. Know more people that we're live, but Meredith, we can see you really well.
Okay. So is to have a theme in mind first, or a point that you're trying to make, because we tend to wander. I do it myself all the time. I get off track all the time. I'm like, and then we're like, what was I talking about again? Yeah. So having that goal in mind first, because that needs to be the through line from start to finish, because you're going to lose your audience if you don't have a point, right? The key point that you want to talk about, and you need to focus, make sure it's the right one, and stay with it. Then introduce some sort of conflict. Now, this doesn't have to be a fight. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but it's like, I had this obstacle to overcome. I had my challenge of writing this book. How am I going to write this book? And then what you did, so you have the main point in mind that you want to make. So like, let's say, in going back to this example, that I have taken on very tough challenges and succeeded well with them. That's my point. Okay. How am I going to exemplify it? Well, I had this conflict, this starting point where I was given this assignment that I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then you walk people through and you describe how you did it, what skills you used, what experience you drew on to resolve it. Because as humans, this is true, if you notice any movies, your favorite novels, they introduce a conflict at the beginning, right? And you're hooked because you can't turn away until you know how it gets resolved. Because when we have like unresolved conflict, we're like, we can't leave it alone. Like, we got to know how it ends. How does it end? How do they, how do they succeed? How do they get to their, desired ending? So it's that having the theme or the point that you're going to carry from start to finish, introducing the conflict, describing how you brought it all together, and then resolving it at the end.
I love that. Ravi, I hope that helps you. You asked for a formula. Okay, I don't have an equation, but that equals to happy ending. The theme, the conflict, and the action. TC. Yeah. I like acronyms. So it's like, what was my theme? I had this challenge. Don't talk so much. Give an example. What did you what did it look like? Who's the bad guy? And the bad guy here could be you. The bad guy could be bad luck, bad circumstances, because there's always that thesis, antithesis. And then, of course, the action, which really helps to bring it all together. And I love that you said that, Meredith, because we don't maybe realize it, but we've been doing this since we were kids. Mm-hmm. And I'll give you an example. So I'm a big fan of this show called Gilmore Girls. And it's on Netflix. Yeah, it's on Netflix a lot. And I was watching it and I binge watched it. And my son, who's 7 years old, he's like, I see that you're quite a fan of this show. I said, yeah. So tell me, what's the story? So I say, there's a girl. It's about a mom and a daughter. Okay. The first thing he says to me, so Mama, what's the conflict? And I said, what? He said, we learned this in school. And I was like, really? And I'm like, yeah, we have had this in school. There's always a hero. Yep. And there's always some sort of the protagonist and the antagonist. So in storytelling, that can come out in such a beautiful way. So I had to explain it, okay, in this case, the conflict is she wants to go to an expensive school. They don't have money. So then he was like, he perked up and I was like, that's the reaction I want interviewers to have when job seekers ask that question. So I love that you shared that. Thank you so much. We're getting some fabulous comments here, and I'm going to jump in. Literally every part of the world. I see Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, Finland.
Wow.
Hi, Shashi. Thank you very much. Meredith is fantastic. If I have energy, it's a big credit to the guest. I'm sure you guys have seen this when the guest, I'm lucky I've had great guests, but if the guest doesn't bring that energy, it's like, what am I doing here? So, I love that you shared about Hamilton, Brian. That's a fantastic example. I haven't seen it, but I've heard fabulous stories about it.
Yeah, and I love that. For me, I love those kinds of things because it brings history to life. I have become a big fan of history because of things like Hamilton, because of things like Outlander. honest with you. You know what I mean? Because
And I love it because he gets into specifics, and Brian says, try to get your students to memorize facts about Hamilton, watch a story with the music, because it completely changes the stickiness, right? So
remember it.
Yeah, I love that. So hopefully, Rashmi, that answers your question on how you make it interesting. Bring in a bad guy or gal or thing, and that should definitely help you.
Yeah.
Akshay has a very valid question. So what do you do when you can't stop, right? You just go on and on. I mean, Meredith, you said that. I tend to ramble as well. How do we check ourselves?
Again, it depends on the setting. If you're just having a conversation with a friend, whatever. I mean, that's normal. Okay. But if you're going into an interview, if you're doing a podcast, prepare. Frankly, you just prepare. Really kind of like, I have my notes here right next to me on the screen so that to keep myself in check, because I know, know yourself, know if you have the tendency to ramble. I know I do. And have your notes and really think through ahead of time. What are the key points? What do I really want to hit on? What is going to provide the most value to the people I'm talking with? What do I want them to take away from it? And list them. And then, obviously if you're in something like this and you can have your notes available, great. If not, then just, memorize them, but really kind of keep that in mind so that, and then go into it thinking, don't ramble. Tell the story, keep it brief, move on.
There's no shortcut here, Akshay. I think you can't escape the fact that it's a lot of preparation, and it's exactly what Meredith said. And I had a guest last week, John, and he talked about how he prepared for the TEDx talk that he did, which was brilliant. He didn't ramble at all. I'm like, how did you do that? So he was like, it's not luck. I prepared like crazy. And I think when you have an artificial timing, maybe you do that to yourself. You say 90 seconds, I'm going to see if I can, and practice.
Yes.
We all get there. So that's great. Getting lots of nice comments about what you're doing. Ristu has an interesting, suggestion for a book for Rashmi. Thank you so much, Ristu. Ristu's going to be our guest next week, and he's a fountain of wisdom as well, just like you, Meredith. Hey, Tawanda, this is a new friend of mine, again on LinkedIn, never met. Result-focused stories. I love it. The action cannot be in the air that you did and everything was okay, but if possible, quantify it, right?
Yep.
Behavioral interview response is the STAR. Absolutely love that. We all know, we talk about STAR here a lot. So thank you for the reminder. Mm-hmm. Format given the situation, what actions you took, what were the results. It's a great way to demonstrate, and sometimes it's like,
exactly.
Yeah, sometimes, they're like, oh, STAR, behavioral interview. Yeah, but you know what? It's classic.
It works.
And no, it works. There's no need to reinvent the wheel and come up with 100 different formulae. Yeah. If the one that you have right under your nose, even if it's from the 60s or 70s, but it still works in any scenario, then why on earth would you not use it? Yeah. You will master it in terms of LinkedIn. And, Dipsa says, what is your take on pyramid model of communication for storytelling? Meredith, I'm sorry, I don't know about this one. Are you familiar with this one?
Not off the top of my head, to be honest.
No, me neither. Dipsa, if you could just help us clarify, we'll help you out with that one as well. The hero's journey. I was thinking about it when I said, the good and bad, and exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so do you do your introduction, Deepa says, depending on the person you're talking with? Personally, I'll let you answer, Meredith, but personally, yes, for me, I think it's important to read the room.
Yes.
And situations are different. So to some extent, your response would be different. But what is your take on it?
Yeah, it does depend somewhat. Obviously who you are is not going to change, but which parts you highlight, what stories you might want to bring in may vary depending on the audience. 100%. Talking with you and knowing who your audience is, I'm definitely focusing more on my career side. Whereas talking with my friend who is a wellness person and doing an IG Live with her, we're going to focus more on what I learned the things I learned from, my time as a therapist, the wellness tips, mental and emotional wellness tips that I might have, and then also, how that integrates with physical wellness. So what you focus on is going to depend, does depend to some degree on your audience. So really, again, do your homework and know who you're talking to. That is a big thing that I work on with the coaching clients I have who are writing not just books, but honestly, like marketing content as well. You have to know who your audience is, or you cannot appropriately create content for them.
To tailor to them, right?
Absolutely. Because, for your business, I need to know, okay, who's your demographic? What do they care about? What are they coming to you for? What are their pain points? Like, I need to know all of that so that I can speak their language. Because if you don't speak their language, then you're just wasting your time and theirs,
Which is a pity, because you're probably saying great stuff, valuable stuff, but they are not able to decipher it because maybe the jargon is different, or you kind of think you narrowed down the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But that's great, and I have an example for it, because I was asked to do a very short presentation on how to use LinkedIn, and I've done that presentation so many times, and I've seen with some audiences they want the technical tips, and I give it to them. You want something, I'll give it to you, right? But why am I going to give you stuff that you don't want? It's exactly like you said, time is our biggest currency. There's another group that was more about the mindset of it and how the fear of being judged is what prevents people from posting on LinkedIn. They were like, we'll sort them out, the tips, but can you help us get over that hump? And I was like, I completely, I know that, Deepa, you asked about the introduction, but in the introduction, sometimes we don't know how the conversation is going to go. So maybe sometimes, you can have sort of one standard introduction for everyone, and you're asking about authenticity. I don't think that changes a lot, personally, not for me. But then you read the room and you see, normally when I go from A to Z, I know for you it's Z, this is the route I take, but I'm reading the room, this is not the way I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it in a windy way. So, do what works, and the only way you're going to know it is by doing it. You get out and you do it. Not think so much, because thinking can sometimes make a problem seem bigger than it is.
Correct.
So, okay, the McKinsey model, I understand. Okay, that doesn't really come to mind right now, Deepsa, but I don't know, I guess if you read about it, there's probably at least 100, if not 1,000 models of communication. I think it's a question of, for me, it's like a pair of jeans,
I agree.
The one that fits really well and shows your silhouette in the best possible way. You feel good about it, you feel confident about yourself, and stick with it. So rather than doubt it or seek other people's opinions, take what works and stick with it. I know it's not perhaps the answer you're looking for, and I had other questions, but I'm loving the engagement here, so I'm just going to go with this. I'm reading the room. Meredith, do you suggest practicing many prepared questions or improvisation while telling those type of stories?
Yes.
Short answer.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, you can predict to a certain amount, the questions that are going to come your way. And so obviously, yes, definitely prepare for those, some variations on your answers, depending on, how they may ask them in a slightly different way. And then just also know your stuff really well, so that when something comes up that you weren't necessarily planning on, you have some sort of answer ready to go. And I think a lot of it also comes down to confidence, that what you know, that you're good at what you do, and to have some faith in that, that there's a reason that you're in this setting. There are skills, there's experience, there's just your personality and what you bring to it as a unique individual that is good and that matters. And a lot of it, because we all have that little voice in our head that's like, oh, what if I stink? What if this is awful? Whatever. And it's just like, no, I can have confidence in this. I can provide value. I can bring something to the table that's of worth. And just having that confidence, I think helps you too to be able to be a little more agile in an interview or in some sort of, whatever setting that I may not have the exact answer, but I know enough to be able to answer intelligently.
Yeah, I love that. And I can't stress this enough, Ashish, and I know you're not the only person. A lot of us overthink this part. And you've got to tell yourself, I belong here, damn it. I belong here. That's it. Because 80% of it, when it's interviews, it's a mindset game. The remaining 20% is the tips, the strategies. You'll get there. But when it's like those guys can smell the fear, like dogs. And then, it's a vicious circle, because then when we see that they're doubting us because we started the whole nervousness thing,
downward spiral,
nobody's helping. It doesn't help anyone. And it's a pity, because remember we said you belong at the table, damn it. So keep that in mind. So, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Meredith, because we can never forget that. Speaking of mindset, could you give us some tips with your psychology background? Because it's very unique that I have someone here on the show who's also a writer, a coach, a journalist, but also someone with a master's degree and 3,000 hours of coaching, in psychology. When you work with, your clients, and you see those classic downward spiral type of mistakes, even if it's in writing, right? Because at the end of the day, universal human behavior is universal. So share with us some of that.
Some of it I kind of have already shared to some degree, in that people they're interested, they perk up when they hear some sort of conflict, they want the resolution. That's just a human nature thing. That's the storytelling that has gone back through the history of the world, right? That's how our history was passed on, is through storytelling. So that is how we are wired, just as human beings. So knowing that, just having that in the back of your head is very valuable. Something that I picked up through somebody named Donald Miller, and his company is called Story Brand, is this concept of you as the expert are the guide. You're not the hero in the story, right? Your customer, your client, your, boss, maybe, I don't know how that works in terms of boss, but they're the hero, right? And so if you can position yourself as the guide, just in terms of psychology and human nature, people respond to that, because we're all thinking about ourselves. Let's be honest. And that comes into that factors into everything, right? That factors into
what's in it for me. What's in it for me?
Yeah, exactly. And how can I help you? How can I help you get what you want? How can I help you overcome an obstacle, or fill in the blank? So really kind of keeping that in mind is very useful. Just having that psychological construct that people want to be led. They want somebody that they can trust, that they feel like has been there and done that, and they can follow with some confidence. But you are the guide. You're not the hero. Your person, your client, they're the hero of this story. And just kind of having that in your head is extremely valuable. And then speaking their language, finding out what's important to them. What are their values? What are their, what is it that keeps them up at night? Those are the kinds of things that are important to keep in mind in terms of how you communicate, because when you know that, you can speak directly to that. You're not talking in the periphery on stuff that doesn't matter really to them.
Love that. So it's a great answer, and there's a lot of stuff that Meredith has shared. So I've taken a few notes right now and placed them in there. So it helps you, because if you guys want to watch the replay, because not everyone watches the things live, hopefully this helps you as well. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Before I go to the next question, I see that we had something else that got me interested. I think it was Deepsa again, how, Meredith, because this is more sort of, it's a more borderline purely on the communication side, but I still think it's relevant because when we say conflict, we can also talk about differences of opinion, right? Well, maybe you have with the speaker, the presenter, or the interviewer. How can you do that in a classy way without, without, losing your authenticity?
So here is where my psychology background comes into play.
Your hat, yes.
Yeah. Because when I would work with couples or with any two people, right, who are coming to me with some sort of conflict,
yep,
I would say use your I language. So you say, I feel, I believe. So you're not putting it on them. You're owning it. This is my belief. This is, my approach, which is very different than you do this, you do that, which puts people on the defensive, right? And when people are defensive, they shut down and they're not listening anymore. And so you want to keep things open and engaged and not shut down the conversation. And so when you can have strong opinions, it's how you present them. And so one way to do that is to say, my experience has been, I've observed when I do this, this happens, etc. Like, so coming at it just from your perspective, you're not putting it on them. You're not insisting that they also agree with you 100%. You're just presenting another side. And when they say something to you, reflect back what you heard. So it's mirroring is what it's called. Yeah. So say, I'm hearing you say, and just kind of, put it back to what they said in your own words and say, did I get that right? And then so you're keeping that connection open because again, you're trying not to shut down the conversation where they're just mad and they're not listening and they don't want to hear anything more you have to say.
I love that. That's really helpful, Deepsa. So I hope that helps you. And I can't tell you how useful this probably is. And why do I say probably? Because I think I need to apply this with my kids.
Oh, we all
you did pick up the plate from the table is 5 months, 3 times a day, nagging. So that is attack, right? That's an attack.
Yeah.
And instead saying, I saw, you didn't do it. Or, it's also the tone, I know that. Yeah. But you explained it so beautifully on how we can apply this in a formal, in a workplace setting. So that's really helpful. So, bring it to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's going to come across as less offensive, less, sort of attacking to the other person. So thank you for sharing.
Just one more quick thing that goes along with that. Avoid the words always and never. So, because they're rarely true, let's be honest.
Yes.
So don't say, you always do this, or that, you never do this. Those are fighting words. Don't go there. Yeah. Again, that will shut down the conversation. So so avoid those words. They're rarely accurate if you really dig down deep, and they just create barriers instead of keeping the conversation open.
I love that. Thank you. Wonderful. So fabulous. I'm just gonna see if we have any other questions because I'm not done with you. I have so much. We've barely scratched the surface here. Lots of other people. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So that's why I'm like, the comments are a little bit out of control. Makbul, how are you? Tell me, Meredith, when we talked about it and Deepsa touched upon it to some extent, let's talk about authenticity and oversharing.
Right.
On social media, we have all seen it.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we have done it. Maybe we didn't know we were doing it. Maybe we knew we were doing it. Okay, I'm talking to the psychologist here.
Yeah.
The oversharing, we can all agree, is a turn off.
Yes.
Turn off, massive turn off. It can be in a professional or in a personal setting, unless you're talking to your bestest friend from in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
And that oversharing can many times be construed as very inappropriate. and maybe the room, you haven't read the room.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that, because I think for some of us there is not a very fine line, not a very clear line. It's a very fine line. And how can we find out when we crossed over from the land of authenticity to the land of inappropriate?
Yeah. The key is why you're doing it. Yeah. Are you sharing this because you are, you need to process it? You're in the midst of processing this piece of information, this thought, whatever. Do not do that in a public setting. If you have not fully processed it and are using this platform to do so, you're probably oversharing. You're probably going to overshare, even if you set out not oversharing. You're probably going to veer that way because it's still evolving. It's still too fresh. If it's something that is painful for you and it's still raw, and again, you haven't processed it all the way, that's probably going to end up in oversharing, making people feel uncomfortable and turning them off, and they're signing off. If, on the other hand, you are coming at it to provide value, I went through this experience and this is what I learned from it. And I think that lesson might be something that you could benefit from as well, because it's kind of a shared human experience. You've already processed it. It's not an active pain point for you where when you think of it, you're like, ugh, it still hurts. Then that is probably more the place of authenticity as opposed to oversharing. Again, in writing, they say that you should share only things from your scars, not your wounds. So if it's an open wound and you're still, again, in the midst of it, let's say, so 10 years ago, I got a divorce. If I had talked about that divorce then, I probably would have gotten into some oversharing because that was a pretty raw wound at the time.
Sure.
A decade later, it's different. Now I have the benefit of my experience and
distance.
Yeah, exactly. And the lessons that I've learned from it and the good that came from it that I can share that other people can relate to who might be going through the same experience. So
I love that.
I'm not saying like all these details that are super inappropriate that nobody needs to know about.
Oh, and we see celebrities do this all the time. Meredith, they need to hire you.
Yes.
Because they are not, it hasn't processed yet, and it's like mudslinging. And I don't want to say which country, but we have leaders in countries who do that all the time.
It's a hot mess. It is. You want to be part of that.
Oh my God. This is very tweetable. Share your scars, not your wounds, because your wounds have to heal first.
Right.
And then there will be some sort of scar. Right. And then the scar will disappear at some point or the other. Share that. Talk about that, even when it's a scar. Why? Because the wound is not festering. And the festering in the mind is probably way worse than whatever you're talking. So I love that. Thank you so much. Brilliant answer. I hope that helps people when they're thinking about it. Because if you're sharing to get interest and pity,
right,
and attention, then it's self-serving.
That's right. Yep. And you're positioning yourself as the hero and not the guide. So you always want to think of the other person. Am I serving the other person? Am I providing value? Am I giving them something that can help them in their career, in their life, whatever, that can help them, benefit them?
Exactly. You see these, by the way, and I think it's a bit nuanced, Meredith, and maybe some of you feel free to engage and tell me what you think. It looks like it's serving the public. I was really poor and I did this and I became successful. If I can do it, you can do it. You see these stories all the time on LinkedIn. I don't know how many of them are true. No problem. But when you can tell by the language on how much of it is I, because no one is self-made, right? And you can tell, is it really serving other people, or is it more self-serving? It's like, a backhanded compliment or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's subtle. It's not sometimes as black and white as you think it is. So it's good to keep that in mind.
And something that can be very helpful, if you're not sure, ask somebody you trust and say, look, here's what I was thinking of sharing. What do you think? Is it appropriate? Is it not? And and if it's a trusted person who will tell you the truth, then that can be very helpful.
I love that. I think you need. Thank goodness, I have a husband who is, let's say he's got some uses. Okay, one of his best uses is a filter. He filters, and I'm like, I want to share this. What do you think? Don't think about it because it looks like, and I'm like, oh, I didn't mean it. So we're not saying that you do this because you want to be liked. Sometimes it may not be obvious, but it may come across because the perception is very different from your reality.
That's right. Yeah.
So fabulous. Great. A quick question for some of the. I'm asking for a friend. I had the same question last week to someone who was a TEDx speaker, and I was like, how do you get a TEDx talk? I'm asking for a friend. Yeah. It's the same friend. If someone is thinking about becoming a writer, or they've been passionate about it since they were younger, and they're toying with the idea of a book, they don't quite know how to go about it. Those of you who are listening are like, that's not me. I don't want to do it. I would say, listen to Meredith's answer. Let's keep an open mind because we don't know what the future brings. Yeah. So Meredith, talk to us as if, we're your like prospective client. We're having a call with you. We have no clue where to begin.
Yeah. So, I'm always interested in what's the idea. What is your idea that you want to share? And sometimes it has to do with business. Sometimes it has to do with just a personal experience that they've always just wanted to write about and share because there are some shared human experiences that they think can be of value to other people. So a lot of times, I'm just like, tell me what it is. What is your story? And usually they tell me and then they say, is this anything? Does anybody care? Does anybody want to read about this?
How do you know that? So how do you determine if this is going to fly or not?
Ask somebody. You can call me. We can do a free consultation. I'll tell you. I will say though, for the people who tend to reach out and it's something they've been thinking about for a long time. It's something that won't let them go. And if there's something like that, it's worth pursuing and talking to somebody about and seeing. Usually the answer is yes. Sorry, hold on. I have a kid coming into the picture.
Okay. Work from home.
That's right. Anyway, and a kid hovering. I'm like, what do you want?
You're very focused considering there's a kid hovering. When my kid is hovering, I'm like, I give that look, that mom look. You all know that mom look.
Okay. Usually I will say yes, because it is interesting, because your story matters. Your lived experience matters. Now, what format this takes, if it's going to be a bestseller, I don't know. But there's usually some format that you can put your story into and share, and somebody's going to get value out of it. Because we are always looking for that thing where we're like, oh, you too? Oh, I'm not alone in this experience. That's powerful when we have that.
The relatability. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the relatability, 100%. Mm-hmm. So, I guess I use a little bit of my psychology background to kind of like dig a little deeper and find out, what is your goal in wanting to share this story? If you had a child with special needs and you were not coming across the resources that you really needed and wanted, and so you created something, and now you want to share that story and what you created, yeah, please share that. And okay, now we kind of know some different formats that will probably be appropriate for that because of your audience, because of who you're writing for. You're writing probably to other parents with special needs who desperately want and need these resources that you've created out of necessity, right? So I can give you a million different scenarios of people have come to me, but it's figuring out what your story is, who your audience is, what it is that you want to share with them, and then having somebody like me who can help you determine, okay, there are a couple different paths we could go with this, and figuring out the best format for it based on the audience you're trying to reach. Then it's doing the work. It's having, again, that through line, that theme or a couple themes that you want to take people from start to finish. There is a journey you're taking them through, right? What is that? Like spelling that out, creating an outline. Outlines were like the bane of my existence in school. And now they're like my favorite thing.
Best friends, yeah.
Because they work. It makes you clarify your thoughts, your approach. Like, what is it? What are the key points? How do they fit into like sections, chapters? What are the key points I want to make in each? How does it flow? Will this make sense to somebody who doesn't have my experience, who doesn't know everything I know? What details do I need to fill in to make sure that I'm carrying them along with me, that I'm not losing them because I'm confusing them? And then you just kind of put the meat on the bones then once you have that nice framework and you write the book. And that sounds oversimplified.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a long winding road, but I'm sure it's worth it, right? So and that reminds me, because before I forget, in case somebody thinks about it one day in the future, Meredith and I were working, that's how we met. We were together with the same coach.
Yeah.
I've seen Meredith's work. It's excellent. So in case anybody's thinking about writing a book and, you want to test something out, because I know Meredith does proposals, and I think you're very selective as well, Meredith, but I think sometimes for the right person, you also look at their website, because I know you have a very nice website. So I believe you have a group coaching session coming up on the 1st of September. So in case there's anybody interested, her website is right here, meredithwatkins.com. Please do get in touch with her and follow her work. So yeah, I wanted to put that in there because I tend to forget, and I think it's important, the work that you do and the difference that you make.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Meredith, tell me, we're coming close to the end. Over the last decade and a half, 2 decades that, spanned your career, we all have those lessons when, and one of those you already shared, do you regret? And, we talked about regret, but looking back, I like asking this question to all the guests. What are some of those lessons you wish you knew sooner so that we can learn from your wisdom right now?
I think it is that I thought at the beginning of my career, go with the thing that you're good at, which is not necessarily bad advice, but just because you're good at it doesn't mean you love it. Mm-hmm. And so I think part of my winding path has been finding things that I'm good at and also am passionate about. The things that I'm like, it gives me energy. I am actually mostly an introvert. So like after this, I'm going to be very tired.
Yeah, I understand.
Getting a lot of my energy. Whereas like my extrovert friends, they'd be like flying high after this because it gave them energy, right? So anyway, I wish that I had thought about, or somebody had said to me, or I'd focused more on the things that filled me up with energy. The things that when I was done, I was like, oh, wow, that was, that was great. And like this, I will have that like positive jolt, but then also just the tiredness of the version of
energy. What is it? There's energy depleting. Yeah. And there's energy sort of fulfilling. And we all know the answer because we can feel it in our gut.
And I think where I've seen this, because I've been in the workplace for 20 plus years now, is there are certain tasks or jobs that you just do not want to do. And it takes, the actual task does not take that long. but it's taking you forever because you do not want to do it, because it is just like not, and I mean, we all have stuff in our lives we just have to do, and that's life, that's being a grown-up. But as a career, I think like really trying to dig deeper and keep trying things. Obviously it's not going to come to you automatically, but just trying different things and seeing what is the thing that you're both good at and that you're actually excited about doing. It just makes everything so much nicer and easier to do. And so I think like now this intersection of like author coaching, where I am interacting with people one-on-one, which I prefer generally, or in small groups, in that kind of book therapy, I call it, way, and also bringing the experience of what I know about publishing and writing and helping, and those two are married together in this way. And so when I get off a coaching call with somebody and they're like, you know, even just a consultation, and they're like, you get it, you understand what I'm trying to say, you know, I feel so excited, I'm going to work on this and, you know, move forward with it, and this is huge. You know, they feel seen, they feel validated, and I feel great about that. So sometimes it takes 20 some odd years.
Eventually we all get there in the end.
Right. But I think, you know, if I just had that mindset sooner, maybe I would have gotten there quicker, but who knows?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, sometimes we just kind of have to go through that.
Sometimes you do. Yeah.
You need to appreciate where we are today. So fantastic. There's so many lovely things that you shared, and I've put these down in these little banners for everyone. So it's been a little quiet in the chatter, so not sure what's going on, but really appreciate the time that everyone's been here. So Meredith, this has been hugely helpful, and I'm so grateful that you took out the time. And I know we talked about introvert, extrovert. I don't want to I don't want to re-emphasize the stereotypes, but I do know what you're talking about, because I have my introvert set of friends, and they're like, okay, it's 2 in the afternoon, I'm going to take a nap because I am done after your LinkedIn live. Your day is just beginning because it's like 10 a.m. for you.
That's right.
So, Meredith, thank you so much for being here. Highly appreciate it. And thanks everyone for being here. Have a lovely rest of the day and weekend, and be safe. Take care. Bye, everyone.